Hello, my friends. Here are the three, actually, it's 8 big stories today. The first one I kind of talked about this morning, and I'll try to move it through quickly. So, Putin was saying for Russia, the strategic defeat means the end of statehood and a 1,000-year history. Then the question arises, why should we be afraid? Isn't it better to go to the end? And it looked like nuclear saber rattling. McFall says this, no, this not logic. And McFall says, this is not logic, this is kooky. Putin's idiotic decision to invade Ukraine will not end the Russian state. And it's true, no more than the Japanese state was ended after World War II, but the empire was no more, but Japan lived on. This is another sign of desperation, trying to scare the Russian people to fight forever. That's exactly right. It's not going to work out well for him because this has got his handprints all over it, but it won't be the end of Russia. Okay, second big story. Russia may be behind the attack on this arms plant in Berlin last month. We talked about that some time ago. There's now concrete evidence of Russia's involvement in the fire at the plant. It was passed on to Berlin by a foreign intelligence service. Here's the article in the Kyiv Post. Russia may be behind this. Russian agents may have been involved in that fire. Evidence of Russian involvement in the fire was passed on. 7 weeks after the fire, Deal's management stated that the cause of the fire was a technical malfunction, but other things have been happening as well. The plant in southwestern Berlin caught fire on May 3rd, and the entire western part of the capital was enveloped in toxic smoke. There's also been a string of fires at arms and ammunition factories, like in Europe and other places. And if the Russians are behind that and they're doing this and NATO does nothing, what's going on? An explosion took place at the Mesko arms plant in Poland. And the day before that, the BAE Systems fire, firefighters responded to a fire at an ammunition manufacturer, General Dynamics in Scranton, Pennsylvania. November 2023, the owner of a Bulgarian arms manufacturer accused Moscow of staging multiple explosions, and the list goes on and on. So could they be coincidences, or could they just be separate instances of something going wrong? Sure, but if Russia's fingers are all over this, that is a whole different problem set, and the West is going to have to figure out how to respond. And this looks like it's going to be up to Mark Rutte to figure this kind of thing out. He's set to be the next NATO chief as his rival dropped out. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is set to become the next Secretary General of NATO after his only rival, the Romanian president, was withdrawing his bid at the end of the week. While Mr. Rutte is the only remaining candidate in the race, he is yet to be officially confirmed by member states. Rutte, 57, will inherit overseeing NATO's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, as well as the job of maintaining the U.S.'s commitment to the alliance if Trump is re-elected as president. Mr. Rutte, however, has been credited with dealing positively with Trump in the past, so maybe that'll be a good thing. And his bona fides to supporting Ukraine have been pretty significant. He's been a strong defender and supporter of Ukraine. Rutte's support of Ukraine and his 14-year stint at the top of European politics earned him candidacy endorsement for many NATO members, including key players in the UK, US, France, and Germany. However, 3 member nations, Hungary, Romania, and Turkey, now remember, it was the president of Romania, and you know what Hungary is like, and Turkey's kind of, it can come and go within NATO. It's always been a strange player within NATO. After expressing reservations, Turkey said that it would support Mr. Rutte's bid after the Dutch Prime Minister traveled there in April to seek President Erdogan's, conversation, discussion, whatever, and they worked it out, it appears. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban wrote on Twitter that Mr. Rutte had confirmed that he, quote, fully supports the deal brokered by Mr. Stoltenberg. Hungary was now ready to support him. Now, the deal there was that while NATO's doing whatever NATO's doing, Hungary can opt out of that. And so that's probably a good thing so that Hungary doesn't get in the way. Like, yes, you can opt out, but you don't get a chance to veto stuff. So, okay, I mean, that's where we are with that. Okay, next. This was a fascinating article. Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and China will build a railroad to Europe bypassing Russia, well, to Europe is a little bit of a stretch, but it's a railroad that leads you most of the way to the highway to the Caspian, but it goes around Russia. Like, why is China doing that? I thought they were bosom buddies, right? Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan have agreed with China to build a railroad to Europe that would bypass Russia. The agreement on the project has been in discussion for 27 years, and it was signed on June 6th in Beijing, and construction is scheduled to begin in October. Experts note that the annual volume of freight on traffic will reach 15 million tons, and the period of delivery of goods to the end consumers will be reduced by 7 days, so it becomes significantly more efficient. In addition, a modern transit and logistics infrastructure, warehouses and terminals will be created along the way, and the highways that will then connect to other roads in Central Asian countries where cargo will then go to the Caspian Sea. So here's a little map of the railroad, and it ends at Tashkent. Now, I'm not familiar with the geography here, so I had to look it up. So Tashkent's here. It's going from China into here, and then the road systems can take you out to the Caspian Sea, and Caspian to the Baltic, Caspian to the Black Sea, and then out into Europe. Okay, so that's pretty interesting that they're bypassing Russia in that process. In other news, the ambassadors of the European Union countries have given their in-principle consent to begin EU accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova starting on June 25th. Here's the article in the AP. And so, yeah, Ukraine applied like a week after the invasion. I remember that specifically. I remember reading Zelensky's speeches about it, and they made huge progress. And now to join the EU, and they're working on it headlong, countries must go through a long process where they align their laws to the EU laws, and they have to curb entrenched corruption and things along those lines. They've been working at that. So it's not just Ukraine. Moldova is doing this as well. The way that this was written was great. Moldova has nervously eyed the invasion of its neighbor by Russia. It's repeatedly accused Russia of conducting hybrid war against the country, including allegedly Moscow meddling in local elections and running vast disinformation campaigns, trying to topple the government, derail its path to joining the EU. Russia has denied these accusations, but the Moldovan government remains wary of Moscow's intentions. Today, I signed a decree on initiating Moldova's EU accession negotiations, said the president of Moldova. Yeah, I mean, just think about how nervous Russia makes everyone else in the neighborhood. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the very next day, or the day after that, I think it was, the Finnish president is in Washington meeting with Biden, right? And then they joined NATO shortly thereafter. Like, they got that paperwork in the mix. So that's how I put out a little short today talking about how Putin is NATO's chief salesman. Like, nobody has done more for NATO, or in this case, the European Union, than Putin. Designating Russia as a state sponsor of terror is long overdue, and the effect of the information space would be dramatic as the Kremlin's arsenal of Western-paid influencers would be forced to find jobs or move to Russia. So this might be happening, but I don't think so. I mean, I think it's... So, okay, so Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal introduced a bill to do this. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but they want to designate Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, just like Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria. And then they gave examples of what they did with chemical poisoning of the Ukrainian presidential candidate in 2004, or the illegal invasion of Ukraine in 2022 or 2024, the Russian opposition leader Navalny being killed. And so it goes on. Here's another article in The Hill. Only these foreign nations are designated currently as state sponsors of terrorism. Graham said this: "We're not trying to be provocative by labeling Putin a state sponsor of terrorism. After the defense agreement between North Korea and Russia, it's time for us to push back. Now is the moment above all other moments. So I would urge the administration, given what Putin has done yesterday, let's go all in and designate his regime for what it is, a state sponsor of terrorism. Here's a general rule. Anyone that does a defense agreement with North Korea should be a state sponsor." I mean, I think the logic's pretty fair. Okay, Slovakia. Slovakia's defense ministry will initiate criminal proceedings against the former prime minister and former defense minister over the transfer of MiG-29s to Ukraine. That's the previous administration. The agency state secretary has said. After this decision to transfer the equipment to Ukraine, Slovakia's skies were left unprotected and citizens were put in danger. By whom? Like who's attacking Slovakia? Nobody is. But this is what they're saying. They're like charging the previous administration. That is a recipe for jacking up things. If you can go after the last administrators, nobody's going to want to run under those kind of provisions. But I mean, that's politics, and that's where we are. Speaking of politics, we have our own problems in the United States. Donald Trump was parroting Russian talking points. I watched the video. I will not inflict it upon you. But it was basically, well, you know, I know for 20 years Putin didn't want NATO there, and this is why the war started. It's because NATO is getting too close. And he was just saying that kind of thing. In fact, today I was in the store. See, I'm wearing my MAGA hat. I'm wearing this in the grocery store, and I see a guy with a MAGA hat. So I go over to him and I strike up a conversation. I say, well, I see you're wearing a MAGA hat. And I explain, like, he didn't know what MAGA was. He didn't realize that it had a thing. But I framed it as, look, I'm as conservative as they make them. I'm not MAGA. I'm a Reagan conservative. And I don't understand, why is it that Trump keeps doubling down on this whole idea of, like, you know, Russia's good, Ukraine's bad. What's going on? And like, he just gave me standard talking points that you would see coming out of a Trump speech, and it was really bizarre to watch. I mean, I had a conversation. He wasn't mean to me or anything, but it was just really bizarre to watch. Okay, at any rate, that's where we are. Back by popular demand from this morning, we will see Putin and Kim Jong-un in the RS, just having a great time on a road trip, driving around over the center of the road in the vehicle that Putin gave Kim, with a soundtrack. Here we go. It's better with the soundtrack, isn't it? Why are they in the middle of the road? I didn't understand that the first time. Okay, now they switch positions, they're having a good time, they're laughing, Kim's telling jokes and Putin's responding. Alright, it's like a rap video. Okay, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.